ahead and start with introductions. My name is Michael Champagne. I am council president for the Archdiocese of New Orleans. To my left, Christopher Gross, he's our CEO. And to my right is Kelly Parker, and she works with our conferences. She's our liaison and director of Vincentian programs here in New Orleans. The title of this particular session is Case Management and Reporting, Processes and Best Practices. We'll go ahead and ask everybody to put their microphone on mute. If you want to go ahead and ask questions, we ask you to submit them in writing using the and so someone with a heck of a cough needs to mute their button, please. Thank you. But yeah, let's put everything through the chat button, and we'll try to respond. Along with the three of us on this presentation is Mr. Mark Stein with the Serveware Corporation. Serveware is a system that is being utilized currently here in the New Orleans Council. Roughly 7 out of our 35 conferences are using it, which means there's plenty of opportunity for expansion. And that's what part of this presentation is about. Just to get a little bit of background, most conferences are doing this stuff manually, the reporting. I can tell you firsthand, our conference president was out last year when it was time to put together the annual reports, and that particular task fell upon me. And finding adequate records, etc. And no, this is not the Housing and Homelessness Services Pandemic webinar. If you're signed in for that one, there should be another login that you should have received through email from Amanda Strickland. So check your email for that. But getting back to what we were talking about, my own experience was doing the report isn't the problem. It's the record keeping during the year that is what the problem seems to be. When we write that check out for an electric bill, we know what the amount is, but we don't necessarily know how many people were affected by writing that check. And as you know, when we're doing the reporting, they want to know how many people are served. So if we write one check, but there's 5 people who live in a household, that's 5 people who are affected. Same thing if we're giving out food. You give out a box of food valued at, let's say, $50. How many people are in that household? 2, 4, or more, etc. So where are you and how are you keeping those records? Are you using a spreadsheet? Are you just manually keeping these records and then, at the end of every month or every 3 months, putting this stuff together? So the whole idea is to come up with a way to streamline the process, move from paper record keeping to a system that's easily managed like Serveware. I'm going to turn it over to our liaison here, Kelly Parker, because she's the one responsible on our end for getting these reports in a timely manner. So let me turn it over to you, Kelly.
Hi guys, thank you all for joining us. Just to piggyback off of what Michael discussed, platforms are essential in helping us streamline and get this information that's needed to be submitted in a timely manner. But I think the processes in helping our conferences stick to those processes in a timely manner is also important. As we all know, we can get easily overwhelmed. And if a lot of these tasks are taken on as they occur, I think that will help. So I always try to encourage conference leadership to take care of the data entry in a timely manner, if at all possible. It just helps if you pretty much break down what needs to be recorded quarterly. And then when you have when we have the deadlines to take care of things annually, it's just pretty easy, more easily to do if it's done in a timely manner. You're basically just compiling what you've done per quarter and not just having the task of going back and trying to refer what was done some time ago. It's like I said, we're doing a lot and it can be overwhelming. So just, I guess, focusing on the practice of taking care of the data in that timely manner is always helpful. And that's what I try to encourage to our conferences.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kelly. And that's the key. You know, if we're doing the reports quarterly, then all you have to do is, after you finish the fourth quarter report, you do a compilation, you enter the data in, and it's done. But again, it's the record keeping during the year that is important. You know, we're coming up upon the end of the third quarter already, coming into, you know, the 1st of July. So, you know, the annual reporting is going to be just around the corner. So if you haven't even started putting together your reports, you know, you're way behind the 8 ball. And you know, I can speak for a few different councils. You know, we can't do our compilation until we have all 35 of our conferences reports in. You know, the district presidents are responsible for their individual districts for getting these reports done. And, you know, it's incumbent upon the individual conference presidents to make sure whoever's doing the records, you know, your secretary, treasurer, however you're doing that locally, you know, that this is being done. You know, the other thing is the numbers have to match. Okay. I mean, if you're saying you got X dollars in the bank and that's what you're showing on your report, they need to match. You know, one of the things that we ask for is we want a copy of the bank statement. Okay. Because the money that you're saying you have should be tied into that. So, and the other thing that you got to look at, and like our council is applying for its own individual tax ID, you know, nonprofit ID with the IRS. We're responsible for everything. Okay, so when they're using our EIN and using our tax exempt status, we're responsible for that to be done in a proper manner. So, you know, that's why it's incumbent to make sure all of this stuff goes together. So I'm going to turn this over to our CEO, Chris Gross, who's going to do the intro for Mr. Mark Stein.
How y'all doing? Before I introduce Mr. Stein, also part of the protocol of having an online system is that sometimes when you're applying for grants, you need information in real time. So your low-level grants between 5,000 to 15,000, they're going to want some information almost as soon as possible that you can't wait on the quarterly. Obviously, your bigger grants are going to say 3 quarters, and your much larger grants, probably over 80,000, are going to want the year. However, in the effort to start applying for these grants, if you're using a serverware system or something of that nature, then we have information real time, hit a button, print, it's good to go. So I think that is one of the most important parts of it. Also, I know we struggle with technology, but we also need to move our society into the future a little bit, because that is where we're going and that's where we're headed. So with that ado, we have Mr. Stein with serverware. He's going to do a little introduction, and I think he'll have some question and answer time afterwards. Thank y'all.
All right, Mark, go ahead and take it over, sir.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. So it's first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I really appreciate this opportunity. I've been working with New Orleans for a few years now, and I'll give you a little background. Let me share my screen. I've got a brief PowerPoint slide, and then I'll talk about a few things about the background of serverware, and then jump into serverware itself so you can get a firsthand view of how it looks like and how, you know, how the workflow operates. So let me share my screen here, and let me know when you're ready when you're able to see my screen. Anybody able to see anything yet? Mike? Chris?
Not yet, Mark. Hang on a minute. Let me make sure. Where's your, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. Well, folks, first of all, I just want to give you a little background about serverware. I'm one of the co-founders of serverware. We started this in 2012 we're actually Vincentians ourselves. So my wife, who's also Vincentian, basically did a lot of the manual paperwork, Excel spreadsheets for our conference activities, and it was very error prone and slow, and basically delayed by mail or email or exchange of records and things. So we started looking for a better system. And we really were surprised. We couldn't find anything specifically dedicated to St. Vincent de Paul. There are some applications out there, charity applications, that have made some tweaks to support St. Vincent de Paul, but we were looking for something just dedicated strictly to the St. Vincent de Paul workflow. So I have a background in software development, have over 30 years of software development experience in my corporate life. And so I got together with some colleagues, and we basically wanted to build something that was very robust, very user-friendly, and we didn't want to just do it so it was running on somebody's computer at their house. So we actually developed it and really focused on the simplicity. And we started with the conferences in the Dayton, Ohio area, and had dozens of interviews with call takers, home visitors, treasurers, procurement people, presidents, to understand their workflow. And then we basically designed a system to, as Kelly alluded to, you have to get that day-to-day data entry into the system. There's some systems out there that actually are very good at like the treasurer aspects and those, in generating reports, but they're not very good at collecting the day-to-day data, and they're not very user-friendly. So we wanted something that was started at the ground level that helped with the day-to-day operations to collect the data and then build on that data once we had it to generate all the reports you needed. So basically you have a centralized neighbor management system here and many reports. I'll show some of those here in a moment. You can search easily for existing neighbors or add new ones. You can see historical requests very easily. And this really eliminates the need for paper binders, your Excel spreadsheets, and people can log in really from anywhere you have an internet connection and a browser. So that's really one of the huge benefits to normal manual processes. If you're, at home, or you're in the parish office, or you're on vacation, you can log into Servware from your smartphone, your laptop, your browser. It's very user-friendly on any device with an internet connection and a phone. So it's also, we wanted again to make it very robust. So we actually hosted on the Amazon cloud, which everybody's probably familiar with Amazon from a marketplace perspective. Well, they offer services for software applications to host their applications on their environment. And that gives us, huge, tremendous benefits. We get automatic backup of data, 24/7 availability, very highly secure. So in 8 years now, we have not had an outage on Servware, and so other than the planned ones. So basically, it's very beneficial to have this hosted on Amazon. So it's also very inexpensive. I'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but I wanted to jump in actually and show the actual Servware user interface and give you an idea of how that works. So can everybody see my browser screen now? Okay, great. So this is the Servware homepage. I kind of bypassed the login page. Everybody securely logs in with your own username and information. We use the same type of security you use for online purchasing, like at Amazon or online banking, so it's very secure. And when any conference logs in, they basically have a homepage here where they can see calendar events that have been scheduled, any visits that have been scheduled as well. Very easy to create these and see these on the calendar. So anybody that logs in for your conference has a quick view of the updated visits that have been planned. Okay, you also have several other content areas over here on the right. You can see the recent neighbors and assistance requests that you've worked with. This is user specific. You have some statistics for your conference related to requests, the number of neighbors in your conference, and so on. And then there's some features you can also turn on. Servware is very extensible. we basically continue to evolve it, and we'd have releases multiple times a year. So over here on the right, you see some of our optional features you can turn on. If you wanted to schedule follow-ups for a neighbor, maybe after you help them, you maybe paid their rent last month, but you want to follow up next month to see how they're doing, you could schedule follow-ups for them. So again, these are just some optional items you could turn on, tracking your bus passes, your gas cards, and so on. So let me jump into the neighbors page. This is where you're going to spend the bulk of your time as a conference, regarding like your helpline or your calls. So if you go to the neighbors page, you'll basically see a grid here that is essentially the neighbors currently associated with your conference. You have a lot of information here, and basically demographic information, phone numbers, date of birth, their zip code. You can also show last four of social security number. Again, you can do a lot with configuration and serveware, and you can edit their record. You can initiate a brand new assistance request very quickly. I'll do that here in a moment. You also have this history button over here, and if you hover over that, it actually will show you at a glance how recently you've helped this neighbor. And if you want to see more details, you can click on this. I'll do that here in a moment as well. And then you have a search box up here. So this allows you to search very quickly across your neighbors that have been entered. So say somebody called into the helpline or contacted the parish. Maybe their name is Carl Yastrzemski. So you start putting in Yastrzemski and spell it roughly close. And so you can see basically it narrowed down very quickly to some records that have that information in it. If you knew that basically maybe they lived on Elm Street, you could type that in as well, and it would basically find anyone that had ELM in any of these fields here. So very easy to do searches. You could search by phone number, zip code. You could do last four of social if you have that enabled as well. And so once you find your neighbor, you basically can click on, again, you can look at the history if you like. So I could click on that, and you can see it takes me to the history tab, and I can see all past assistance that's been in serveware over time. You can see some totals at the top of the page here. So you can see current fiscal year, previous year. These are all adjustable too. You can actually turn on more time periods here if you want the last 3 months or 6 months or so on. And then under the general tab here, and let me go back to neighbors just to show you how to get to that. If you click edit here, you'll actually be taken into the neighbors record. And you can see there are a number of tabs here for collecting information. This general tab has a lot of detail on it. And we built these pages basically off of call records for our conference and other conferences we've worked with over the years. Most of these are not required. So one of the things conferences have to decide is how they want to operate with regard to what information they collect on their neighbors. So some areas of the country really are diligent about collecting the ID type for a neighbor or putting in their employment or their education level. Other parts of the country aren't that interested in that information. So you would basically decide on what's relevant for you. But this way you could put in your neighbor information, you could put in expenses. You can see here we've got expenses and income here. These are very easy to change or update. You can see the totals for income and expenses at the top of the page. You can also put in household members. So household members, basically what happens is when you put these in, when you create a new request for the neighbor, serveware actually creates a snapshot in time of that household on the request. So we'll copy over the address information as well as any household member information to the request. So historically, you're always going to have a clear picture. When that request came in 5 years ago or 7 years ago or last year, you'll know who exactly was in the household at that time. But the neighbor record's actually still going to continue to reflect the people in the household currently. You can put in account information if you want to put in, say, utility account details. You can upload files for neighbors. This is a great benefit if, say, you have somebody fill out a grant application, or maybe you want a release of information form, or maybe you want to take a picture of their driver's license and upload it. It's very easy to upload files. We also have, again, through configuration, you can set up special programs for your conference. So maybe you do back to school supplies for children in the fall. You can actually create new programs as an administrator and assign these to your neighbors and do reports for your programs. And then you have those follow-ups I mentioned previously where you could schedule a follow-up for the neighbor. Maybe you want to check up on their health 6 months from now. So a lot of different things you can do in serveware, but you can also just use the basics. So maybe you just put in some general information here, some income and expenses. And once you review this information, maybe they called in on the helpline, you want to go ahead and initiate a new request for them. So basically I searched for Carl, I found his record, I looked at it quickly, and I just clicked new request here. And very quickly, I have a new assistance request created. And I have a general tab here. The status is open. The request date defaults to the current date, but I can change that. Maybe he called in on Monday, actually. And maybe this is a callback that's needed because he just called in on the helpline. And so I'll go ahead and click save here. Okay. So I wanted to show you real quickly. That was very quick flow to create a new request from the helpline. So now when I come back into my home page, you can see Carl's listed right here on my recent neighbors and recent assistance requests. So again, these are user specific. So these are what I see. So another user might log in and they'd see a different list. Now, if you were logging in, say after a few days, and you were back on duty for maybe call taking or home visits, you can go to the request page here. Okay. If you click that, basically what you're seeing now is a list of assistance requests that have actually been generated for your neighbors. These are in chronological order, so you can see the request date here, and here's the one that we just created for Carl, so you very quickly can see it. So you log in, you can see the recent activity, and you can realize, okay, maybe you're back on duty today, so you need to do some callbacks to individuals to get more details. So what you could do is you could simply edit this, and maybe you spoke with Carl, okay, and so you could change this back to an open status. We'll say he requested rent assistance, and we'll say it's $400, and save that. And at this point, there's other information here you can put in. I mentioned the household members. They got copied over to this request for a snapshot in time for reporting purposes. Also have the address here. You also have an assistance tab here. This is where we're going to put in any assistance that occurs for this household if it's approved. And then you have that history tab again. So this is that same history tab we saw in the neighbor record. We just put it in, on each assistance request just for simplicity and easy access. So it's always available from a request or the neighbor record. So you can put in request or visit details here as well. We support all different types of visits required or supported by national. You can put in the assigned to values here. So if say you're doing a home visit, you could select from your conference members that are defined, and then you could put in the scheduled time. Maybe we're going to do that this Saturday, and I could simply click save here. Okay. Now there's also referral information you can add in. Referral agencies and many other aspects of server are very configurable for your area. So administrators can define the referral agencies that are available in your area. So you can assign up to 4 different referral agencies to a neighbor's request. You can also put in referred to conference, and you can also specify referred from sources. So maybe you want to track, how many referrals are we getting from United Way or from another parish across town. So a lot of information you can collect on the request as well. So I'll save this. I have my visit information in here. And I just wanted to show you a couple other pieces of information related to this request itself. So you can print the request. So this actually will print a call record if you're interested in doing that. So say you're a home visitor and you wanted to print just a brief summary to take with you on the visit. You basically could print a 1-page summary here and maybe make notes on it while you're at the visit itself. You also can have an email option here. So what you can do is you can actually email information related to the request to other members of your conference or all conference members. So maybe you would just say, please review. And then when you click send, what happens is any of these individuals will receive an email. All they would see in the email by itself is this message. There'd be no personal information about the neighbor themselves or their situation. There would be a link in their email. When they click on it, it would actually open up their browser. It'd prompt them to log into Servware, and it would actually take them directly to this page. So it's a good way to share information about a request. You could send this to maybe somebody that could possibly do a home visit, or maybe you want to send it to the treasurer to go ahead and write a check for the rent assistance or utility assistance. So a lot of different use cases we see for using this email option. Okay, so you put in your notes afterwards, met with family. and save that. And then you could put in your assistance at that point. So I'm kind of breezing through some of these things, but once you putting in assistance is very straightforward as well. You have an assistance tab, you select the assistance item, new assistance item, and then your assistance types, again, this is configurable by your conference administrators. So this is a demo conference, so you see a lot of different items here. I'm going to select rent since that's what Carl asked for. And when I select that, you can actually see a list of landlords that were created in the system. And so you could actually pick a landlord if it's in here, or if you need to, you can actually go and actually enter in a new landlord entry if this is a new landlord, and then you could assign it to the neighbor. Okay, so if I picked one here, it would populate it for reference. And we actually have landlord reports now that we've added recently to show you the amount of assistance provided out to each landlord for W-9 and tax purposes. You would put in the value here. And a lot of times assistance, when it's first provided to a neighbor or promised, you don't actually write the check that day. Utilities is a good example, rent is a good example. So you actually can make assistance in a pending status here and basically just go ahead and set it to pending. It removes the date provided, and then you can save that. Okay, so you can see this is in pending status now. If there was other assistance related to this request, I could very easily add that. Maybe I'm just going to go ahead and give them a gas card as well. And so I clicked on that. It had a default value, and I'll go ahead and click save here. And then basically you can see I have a couple pieces of assistance, and one of them is pending. Okay, so basically this request would be sort of in a hold pattern until you were ready to close out that pending assistance. So again, if you went to your request page, you can actually see any pending requests with pending assistance associated with them. There's also a view pending assistance page. So you could see basically any outstanding pending assistance and the amount associated with those. Great page for treasurers or people concerned about the financial aspects of the conference. So you could go in here and edit that, takes you right to that request. You could say it's no longer pending. I'm just going to provide it today. You could put in check numbers. We have a check number confirmation number report, and then I'll go ahead and save that. And I'm going to go ahead and complete this request now just so we can move on. We don't have a whole lot of time today. And I'll save that. So that request essentially went through a very expedited workflow of looking up the neighbor, creating a request for them, putting in an assistance entry, adding assistance pending, as well as actually provided, and then finding the pending site assistance and then completing that, completing the request. So quickly, I wanted to show you some of the reports that you get by doing this day-to-day entry. We actually provide a lot of different reports for reporting purposes, both your day-to-day operational reports, like your helpline request activity details. We have an activity summary report. This report is one of our very first reports that we developed, and basically it provides you very significant amount of detail at a granular level. So you have calls received, your households helped, people helped. So somebody, I think it was Chris, mentioned earlier about the ability to generate data, at a granular level very quickly. This is the type of report that might help you do that. So you can get visit information, call only. You have basically numbers here for each of your assistance types that have been defined in the system. And there's no extra configuration that needs to be done to generate this report. You just simply put in those requests and neighbor information, and then the report will pull from that data to generate you these details. So again, referrals, your monetary assistance across all of your assistance types, and then your year-to-date total. Okay, we also have some other reports here, a neighbor assistance summary report. This is a report we developed several months ago. This is a report that will show you your neighbors over the span of time that's entered, and you can always change these dates. Basically, it will show you the households that have been helped the most. So if you're really wanting to focus on where are our funds going, who do we really need to help the most to get out of a situation, this is a great report for doing that. You can see that Carl here has had almost $2,000 in assistance in just the last fiscal year. Okay, and he's had 5 requests in that time frame. Ann here has had 7 requests and quite a bit of help too. So this would allow you maybe to focus on those families. So the additional reports I want to just mention here, we have that housing provider summary report I mentioned earlier. If you want to get a summary of how the housing providers have been paid over time, We do mileage, hours, and service reporting as well. And then we have some other reports like related to programs, neighbor assignment. We have conference membership reports as well. And then this is a report I actually wanted to highlight primarily. So we have what's called a conference activity report. This report, you basically can generate brand new, or we save a PDF copy for you over time, and we have it date and time stamped. So if I click new report here, you can either generate this, you can change the dates, obviously, we default to the current date. You can either generate it as a PDF or as a true Excel spreadsheet that if you wanted to go in and manipulate the numbers yourself. I'm going to go ahead and run this. And what you'll see here is essentially the format of this matches the council or the conference activity report that must be turned into national. So Servware will give you the ability basically to record your beginning and ending balances for your accounts that you've defined in Servware. Based on your membership information you put in, it will actually give you your comparative membership, your ethnicity breakdowns, your total membership, active and associate, and so on, as well as your comparatives. And then down here, you have the treasurer sections. So we actually have national report categories defined in Servware, and we have very detailed instructions in order to generate this report, how you go about configuring the different respective areas. And we'll help any conferences that need extra assistance with that. But basically, once you do configuration for your receipts and expenditures in Servware, you can assign them to a national report category, and this report will automatically be generated for you. Expenses work the same way. You can assign your expense categories to these national report categories that are defined by national, and basically then you see your expenses. You then have your person-to-person visits, your in-kind contributions, and then your hours and mileage report. So these are all the sections that are required on what's referred to as the conference activity report by national. So this report's fairly new. We're actually, it's been utilized, I should say, over the last 6 months now, and it's getting a lot of adoption, and we're tweaking some of the formatting issues on it and other layout issues. But in general, all the forms or the sections are here that you need for your reporting on an annual basis. Now, that being said, I just wanted to mention, I wanted to get to those reports. The finance area here is integral to being able to generate this report. Now, as I mentioned, conferences, the way we started out with Servware is we really wanted to focus on tracking the neighbor and assistance information at a grassroots level, a day-to-day level. So from a usage perspective, that's exactly what conferences can do. So they don't have to feel like they have to sign up and start performing all of these activities at once. You can turn on through configuration, and I'll give a brief overview of that here in a moment. You could just simply turn on these areas right here. If you were a new conference and you said, okay, let's get started with the basics. We're going to basically enter in our neighbor information, assistance requests, and the assistance associated with those. Once you're comfortable with that, after a period of time, you could turn on an option to start tracking your mileage, hours, and service. Maybe then a short period after that, your treasurer wants to get involved and start trying to use Servware for the financial aspects. And then you can turn on a configuration option related to the finance area here. This is going to enable a lot of capabilities. You'll be able to enter in your accounts. You'll be able to track donors, conference receipts, which could be anything from twinning to parish collections to individual donations. You can track your expenditures, which again could be twinning out. Maybe you do twinning out to a parish, or maybe you have food purchase, expenses related to bulk food purchases, things along those lines. You can record all of that into Servware. You can also record deposits, and then you have an accounts section here that basically records account transactions for all of these different types of transaction types, and for all accounts. So basically, when you basically view this is essentially a check register for that particular account. You can export this out to Excel if you want to manipulate it in different ways. You can also print these as well. In any of the reports, you can actually export or print in Servware. Okay, and then you have some setup you can do, some for configuration, so you can really customize your expenditure types, your receipt types. For example, you might have receipt types of in-kind food or in-kind furniture you want to record, or maybe you have a grant that you received that you want to put in as a receipt type and record it and basically allocate that toward a national report category, which you see here. We've got this one associated with other qualified government grants, which will anything put in for this particular category, receipt category in your conference will show up under this grouping in your conference activity report. Okay. And then you also have a number of detailed reports in addition to that conference activity report. If you want to see your expenditure summaries by category, your details, your receipt summaries, details as well, deposits, we have a cash in, cash out report here. This is basically a report that will show you a comparison of your cash in, your receipts for a period of time against your cash out for a period of time. And again, you can always adjust these dates. So if you wanted to do this quarterly, for a month, for a week, you could easily do that as well. Okay. And then you also have your donor reports down here. Okay. So you can do your donor reports and exports. So you wanted to export your donor information to generate a mailing list or something like that, using Word or some other mail merge program or something you were using, or just wanted to have it for reference to write out thank you letters or something, you could do that. The last area I wanted to cover here just briefly, well, actually, let me back up before I hit the admin area. This view menu, I really haven't talked much about this other than the pending assistance, but this is where, like, if you were a home visitor, you could view request visits that are outstanding for open requests. You can view the neighbor follow-ups that are outstanding. You can also view other information regarding landlords, your referral agencies that are defined, utility details. You also, if it's turned on at a district level, you actually have the permission to grant permission for conferences to see the neighbors across their district that are using serveware. So for example, in some areas where, for example, St. Louis, we have about 85 conferences using serveware and they're onboarding all 140 of their conferences over time. They're going to be able to see across all of their council and district neighbors. It's a view only mode. So conferences can't change information associated with another conference, but they can go in and they can do a search for an individual to see if they've been helped by that conference over time. And again, you have that history button here you can hover over, and you can basically see, maybe they've been shopping around. Maybe there's some parishes in close proximity to each other, and somebody's been calling around and getting assistance from multiple parishes. You could basically do a search to find that out if this feature is enabled. You can also see the other conferences in your district. And then you also have this files area. So serveware, as I mentioned earlier, you can upload files associated with your neighbors, specific cases, but you also can upload files into basically this file area for the conference. So you can create folders. So if you wanted to create, say, documents for your call takers, you had maybe some meeting minutes from your conference meetings that your secretary could upload. You could put in W-9 forms up here and make only administrators be able to see these. And then you can upload files into any of these respective folders. You'll also notice there's some other tabs up here. So if your district is using serveware, they actually can upload files and share them with conferences. So for example, in St. Louis, they have some guidelines for their conferences or forums that they want all the conferences to use. So they upload those, and then the conferences can easily get access to those in their files area. And then serveware, the tab here, this is a number of documents that we provide just for support. Administrator guides, user guides, descriptions of reports and how they're created and what their fields mean. We have a new conference checklist, brief checklist here for new conferences to help them get started. So that's some of the view options there. And you can also create your calendar events as well. So you may have noticed on the homepage earlier, there were some items in purple here. These are calendar events that have been created. So you can create events and you can actually email these out to your members as well as showing them on the calendar here. So maybe not everybody logs into serveware in your conference, but you go ahead and set up your conference meetings in serveware on the calendar. And when you set those up, you can actually send an email to your members to say, help, there's a new calendar event, conference meeting on the 24th of June. Okay. The last couple areas I wanted to briefly cover is just the admin area here, just to show you the flexibility of serveware. So basically, if you're an administrator, your role is defined as that in serveware when you're set up, you basically have this admin menu. And you can really customize a lot of these different areas here. So this is where if you're in a certain area of the country and you do certain assistance types, or your neighbors might have different expenses or income that people might not have in other parts of the country, you can really, tailor those to how you operate in your area. You can create your landlords. You can assign member roles to your members, your referral agencies. You can set up denial reasons for if you deny requests, if you want to track the denial reasons. And obviously your special programs and your utilities are here as well. And then you can define your conference members or your volunteers. We do track volunteers as well if you turn that option on. You can define training for your members. And then we're actually working with National right now from a member perspective so that you can, if you put your membership information into Servware, we'll export that out in a format that National requires. And then you basically then could then use to put your or provide your information to National or put it into their National members website. You can't put it in, upload the form today that we're exporting, but we're working with them to possibly allow a file upload where they'll just basically take that format that we provide and they'll take the data and put it into the form themselves. But you would at least have it laid out in the format that they require, and you could easily enter it in at that point. Okay. I did want to mention conference details here just to show you quickly. This is just general information for the conference, but the configuration option here, this is where you really can turn on and customize Servware for your needs. As I mentioned, maybe you start out just working on neighbors and requests and the basics, but then you decide, okay, we want to track some of our gas cards and things. So we'll turn this option on. And then we want to do some mileage, hours, and service tracking. The nice thing about all of these options is you can turn them on and off and you don't lose any data or have any odd events happen with your data. So maybe you turn on mileage, hours, and service for a while, try it out for a week, and then people say, oh, I'm not ready for that. You can go in as an administrator, turn that off and say, okay, let's try it after we get done with our fiscal reporting for the year so we have more time to look at it. And you'll see there's a lot of different configuration options in here. You can turn on case numbers at the client or the request level. You can auto generate them. You can see here I've got financial functions turned on for this conference. Again, you could turn those on if you wanted to. You can do household income levels, phone number formatting, a lot of different options here for configuration options. Obviously, I don't want to overwhelm you here. I just want to give you an idea of the scope or magnitude of things that you can do in Servware, really customize Servware for your conference. And then you also can put in your officers as well. If your district uses Servware, they would have access to this information also. Okay, so those are your details. A couple other areas down here, I'll just describe them. There's a messages area, so you can actually send messages out to your members. So maybe you want to put in, some special thank you for all of your help this year, or for your volunteers. You could generate a message in here very easily. You can actually format it beautifully with this area down here, so you can use bold, italics, and so on. So those are your messages. And then we have an email log to track all emails out of Servware. And then this data export is a way for you to export all of your neighbor data that's been entered, as well as your request data. So sometimes in Servware, even though we have many reports and we're always adding more reports, there are times when maybe you need data manipulated in a certain way. So what you can do is you can actually export your request data, and you can say all requests, you can do a time frame. When you export this out to Excel, you then would have all of the data related to your client and the assistance, which would be things like your dates provided, your promise dates, the actual assistance amounts, the check numbers, and then you could run reports or sort the data however you chose to. So it's a way basically to get at your raw data if you needed to do some additional reporting and manipulation. Okay. And then the last area I just wanted to cover before we jump into questions or additional discussion is this help and support area. So Servware offers very rigorous help and support. So that's one of the things we've prided ourselves on the last several years. We have several support options. So when you're in Servware, you can actually submit a support request. We actually have a very robust ticketing system. It's an enterprise level ticketing system that when you create a support request, say you have a question, maybe you have an enhancement request, maybe you think there's a problem with one of the reports or in Servware, something's not behaving right. you can actually create a request. And when you submit this, you'll actually get an email response from our ticketing system. It'll generate a ticket for us to track the ticket itself, and it'll email members of the team, and then we'll work with you to resolve whatever the issue is, or if it's a new request, we'll add it to our backlog and respond to you. We typically try to respond within 24 hours. We have a very good track record for that. Obviously, if there's higher priority ones, we would focus on those first. We also have a support portal. So if you wanted to log into our support portal to see previous requests or how those were resolved, you could do that. And then we have this serverware training videos. So this is our YouTube training channel. So you can see here we have quite a few videos. This covers a lot of different areas in serverware. You can either play all of these or go down to specific ones to review. If you're just wanting to get tidbits of information here and there about different aspects of serverware, entering a new neighbor, maybe a new assistance request. We also have some full trainings down here as well. So this training is a full 2.5 hours from beginning to end, very comprehensive training. Obviously, you could start and stop it as needed. And then we also have a serverware treasurer training. So really focused on those treasurer aspects that I mentioned earlier with the finances and the expenditures, receipts, donors, and so on. So a lot of video training available. And from a support perspective and training in general, by the way, I just wanted to mention this opens up in a separate tab. So you're still in serverware here. So if, say you wanted to jump over to the training videos, review a video real quick, and then come back into serverware and keep working, you would still have that open, on your other tab. And then these files down here at the bottom, these are the same files you saw previously in that page for your view conference files. It just shows you those same files in one concise help and support area. From a training perspective, I did want to mention we do offer web-based training, live training, in addition to the training videos that are always available. And then we, again, have a very rigorous support process and support system for helping, our conferences as they, on board with serverware or just over time. Okay. So I was going to jump back to my slides unless somebody had some specific questions about, the functionality before I move off of the application. Anybody have any questions before I move back to the slide?
Yeah, please submit your questions through the chat portal. That way we can respond to them, okay, when they come up. So Mark, can you see the live chat as it comes up?
Let me open it up here. Yes, I can.
So there's a question here. If we switch from the current CMS to serverware, is the data transferable? Mark, we'll give that to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things we did early on with serverware is we do have the ability to import data. So we've done it a number of times from CMS already. Basically, we have a specific format, a spreadsheet format. We have instructions as well as an example file that we provide. And then once you get that data into that format, and we can help you with that if you some people aren't that familiar with Excel or need some help, we can help if needed, but typically conferences are able to do that. Once you get into that format, we can easily import that into serverware to kind of jumpstart you with your neighbor information. We can import neighbor information as well as your historical request data. Now, the historical request data would be basically read only. It wouldn't be entered in as discrete assistance entries, but you would at least have a record there that said on this date, they were helped with this, with food. So when you click on the history tab, you're at least going to see all of that information. And we also actually have an assistance import process as well. That's a little bit more complicated than if you did want the discrete data, but it gets a little bit more challenging. We had a request from a couple councils to do that, and we built it for them, and they realized it's almost too much work to do. So they usually just do the client and the assistance summary import, but we do have it available. Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Again, please submit those through the chat portal.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention a few things while we're waiting on that. Let me jump over to the slides here. So again, Servware, we really designed it for user-friendly ease of use. We've had many elderly folks or people not comfortable with computers. As I said, we're Vincentians ourselves, so we understand the demographic, and we've actually had many, I can't tell you how many compliments and positive feedback on how easy it is to use. If you think about it, some of the things I showed you in Servware, if you're a day-to-day user doing helpline or neighbor entry, you're really only using a couple screens. You're seeing the home page, and then you're going into the neighbors page and maybe initiating a request. If you're a home visitor, maybe you're going into the requests area and updating the visit information. And then the rest of the data, basically your administrators and people doing the reporting are going to get that for free in the background. Now, your treasurer will have to do some additional work as well if they want to manage their finance aspects in Servware. But again, we turn configuration on, or we provide configuration for all of these different features. So conferences can choose what pieces they want to use over time. Okay. One of the things I wanted to mention as well is we've tried to keep Servware very inexpensive. We charge $25 a month for a conference, and there is a setup fee of $75 for your client import if you do that, your web-based training, your conference setup, as well as your initial member setup, and then obviously support's always free, and then the $25 a month. And that's the same price that we've had since our inception in 2012. We've never raised the price. We don't really foresee raising the price, frankly, anytime soon. We built this basically for our parish, our council, and then it's continued to expand across the country. We have over 500 conferences in over 30 states using Servware at this time. And that number goes up daily, pretty much. And that's really without much word of mouth, I'm sorry, not without much advertising, or it's basically just by word of mouth itself. We are a national partner of St. Vincent de Paul USA. We were made a partner back in 2017. They had heard about Servware, they wanted a demo, and we basically provided that to them, and they asked us to come to the National Assembly that year to show what we had. They really were impressed with it. And then immediately after that, they asked us to become a national partner, which there's basically vetting and done for that based on the company and their goals and mission. And we've been a good partner to them, over the last several years. We're actually going to be at the Houston National Assembly this August. We go to every National Assembly, and we actually have a workshop that is on the agenda for the National Assembly on Saturday of the week of the Assembly. So we'll be there, and we'll be giving a workshop and an overview of Servware at that time as well. So were there any more questions or right now, or anything I can clarify? I did want to show, I sent this document out to Kelly at New Orleans. This is just going over some of the things, just very high level bullets of what we provide. And then just, a contact us area as well. So if you wanted to reach out to us for more information, the onboarding process for us is very simple and straightforward. It's really a couple steps, and we can bring a conference up within literally a day or two if the conference is ready to move that quickly. We have an onboarding form online that you would fill out. You would decide if you want to do the client import, and if so, we would provide you with the instructions and the template and work with you on that. And then you just have to decide, what do you want to do from a training perspective? Most conferences still do the web-based training, which we actually do recommend. It's a little bit more obviously interactive, and we can cover things in maybe a little bit more detail, or some newer features in detail than the videos, but the videos are always available as well. So very simple, onboard form, client import option, and then training, and you're up and running. So it can be as fast as a day or two, literally. We've had a conference up, I've talked to somebody in the morning and they were using Servware by that evening. And then we've had others that we've been working with. It took them a year to finally make up their mind, but we'll move at the pace of any conference, in the country at their leisure and work in their timelines.
All right, Mark, thank you very much. We're approaching the top of the hour here, and certainly want to thank you for your time and everybody who wanted to participate in this particular